Hi, so I'm here with Trish Petrovich, who is a costume designer for a bunch of movies and other projects, including a lot of Hallmark movies, which is very exciting. So, just to get us started, how did you first get involved with the film and TV industry? Because that wasn't where you started, right?
No, no, yeah. I had a clothing line, and my studio was in the same building as one of the fabric suppliers that a lot of film people use. So people would come into my studio and offer me jobs, and I would turn them down and say, no, I have a clothing line. And then eventually I just said, okay. And I took my first designing job in film, and then yeah, it went from there. My studio sat empty for quite a long time.
So, how did you first get involved with Hallmark and Lifetime? Were they one of the ones that approached you and were like, "Hey, we want you to help design for us"?
Yeah, so I had done some other work before joining up with them. And yeah, Hallmark and Lifetime, they do a lot of work in Vancouver. So yeah, they've approached me a couple times. I work for a couple different production companies here that contract me to them. And yeah, but I have a good relationship with them. They're great companies to work for.
Hmm. So, with your prior experience, so you from what I understand, you had, your own line, your own collection of women's wear clothing, and you worked as a visual director for stores and a bunch of other things. So could you explain a little bit about that and how your prior experience in those realms helped you, I guess, make the transition to become a costume designer?
Well, nothing prepares you for the crazy, fast-paced world of film like trying to run
Of
your own
course.
business. So yeah, I mean it's a similar pace. People are always like, "Wow, film is so crazy." And like, yeah, film is crazy, and doing movies is pretty fast-paced, but so is trying to make deadlines for, spring production, and there's fabric issues and supplier issues. And so it really kind of primed me for the intensity of film, I think.
And this is really just to sate my own personal curiosity because I didn't know this, but what exactly does a visual director do?
So with that was for like a lot of retail outlet, like retail stores. So like a brand will have their retail locations, and a visual director will go in and basically design the setup of the store and the merchandising, and teach people how to visually display their clothes and work with the logistics and the sales team to make sure that like their stores are maximized and visually appealing. Hmm.
Wow, okay. That's crazy. I mean, I never think about these things, but that's so interesting. I mean, now I'm gonna walk in the
It's
next clothing
essentially,
store.
yeah, it's essentially being a stylist for a store. So
Yeah,
doing the designs for the layout and basically that kind of thing. Yeah.
that's super neat. Yeah.
Hmm.
Learn new things every day.
It was a fun job to have in my 20s, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So for film and TV and all that, what's your design process like? I know that's kind of a big question, but
Yeah, it's a big question. It depends what kind of project I'm doing. Like, I mean, I worked a little bit on Snowpiercer,
yeah.
which I guess would be like probably the craziest aesthetically challenging show that I was part of. And that was a little bit different than what we do for like a Lifetime movie or a Hallmark movie. It really just depends on the content, but generally speaking, I'll start with my script breakdown and my research for the content. And then what I do is I actually digitally design.
Oh,
So
uh-huh.
where you used to sketch and kind of work things out on paper, I do everything digitally. So I'll import digital fabrics or garments, and then I'll find out who the cast is, and then I'll design the garments and the styling right on their body
Wow.
digitally. And it actually just really helps to do it that way, because I feel like it's hard to communicate your ideas visually unless like the people are right in front of you wearing the clothes. And
Yeah.
especially with some of these projects, it's pretty like hot and heavy, like really fast. So it really helps to do digital mock-ups of the way things are going to look before we go to camera. And so everybody can kind of sound off on their opinions, and we can get it right.
So, how much collaboration do you do in the design process with the other departments like makeup or lighting before you arrive at your final look?
Um, I mean, usually, like I can't speak for everybody on this, but usually once I have looks designed and the general aesthetic for each character kind of nailed down, I'll share that with the other departments so that if there's any like thing that we need to collaborate on, like whether the fabric is moiré on camera or the makeup department needs to know that it's going to be like a an evening look or anything like that. And I'll just make sure that the general aesthetic is in
Hmm.
line with the vibe for the show.
So, speaking of general aesthetics and vibes, so you've worked a lot for Hallmark, and they have a very specific look, I feel like. So, how do you maintain kind of that Hallmark, that trademark Hallmark, trademark Hallmark? Anyway, sorry, that trademark Hallmark aesthetic while still kind of bringing your own sensibilities and your own style to the
Well,
film?
yeah, it's changed a lot. Especially in the last year or two, I have found a lot of the executives at Hallmark are a lot more willing to open up that aesthetic and broaden it. You have to be sensitive to the brand that they have, but I think it is the way of the world to move forward. And it comes with some challenges because I always like to push the limits and put my own aesthetic in it, while being true to their brand and their vision as well. But I find it's a lot more easy to go through that process with, say, Lifetime or Netflix, because they are a little bit more fluid in what they want. And yeah, it is hard to bring new life to a character while sticking to a certain brand, but we managed to do it.
So what would you classify, again, this is kind of a big question, but what would you classify like your own aesthetic or style as?
Like personally,
Yeah, well, just like, if you're trying to bring your own flair to a project, like I guess what kind of flair do you want to add to kind of
honestly,
make it stand out?
I really try not to be honest. I
Yeah.
really try not to make it about me because it's not
Yeah.
about me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really try to make it about the character, um, and the human, like the human that is wearing the clothes. Because sometimes you get a script and you have an idea of what this person is going to look like. Like they're going to look great in giant hats and bright colors. And then the actress or the actor is standing in front of you and you're like, no, this is
Mm-hmm.
not going to work for you as a human. And you're not going to be able to do your job and sell this character with this giant hat, like,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. So I try not to get too attached to my own ideas of what things should be and just let it evolve as it goes. And I find that if you adopt that mentality of being fluid and going with the flow in the design process, things always work out so much better than sticking to what you thought it should be when you first read the script.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so I mean, you were talking about not you aren't the star here, it's the story. And I just, it's so interesting to me like how we all think of these different departments as kind of like separate and like, oh, costumes separate from lighting, which is separate from set, but it's all, y'all are all working together to tell a story. And anyway, I think that's really interesting. Like
Yeah,
you're
the team dynamic is important. I mean, I've done a lot of different movies and a lot of different shows, some big, some small. And yeah, being a good team player and working within the other departments, it's always critical for the betterment of your own department. So yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, costumes can be a bit of a thing on their own. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So in a Sugar and Spice Holiday, which aired last December. So that featured some traditional Chinese outfits for some of the characters. So I was wondering what that process was like, like how do you research that and how do you acquire these certain specific fabrics and all of that?
So I there were some, we tried to keep it, like the main character, we didn't want her to look like in traditional Chinese clothing because she's an American Chinese person.
Mhm.
But there were elements like her apron, and some heritage pieces that were supposed to be from her grandmother, that we made.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so what that was we basically researched what dialect her family spoke hypothetically in the movie, which was Cantonese. And then we went out and we got some fabrics that had traditional Cantonese writing on it.
Oh, uh-huh.
And then we just made that into the garments for the heritage pieces.
Wow. Okay,
Hmm.
that's so cool.
Hmm.
So, in a kind of similar vein, but you've also done some period costume work for movies like A Timeless Christmas. So, also, how does that process differ from creating more contemporary pieces? And I mean, I guess one thing that I really wonder is just how do you even research, period costumes?
1913. Well, luckily I went to school for fashion design and costume design. So I had a little bit of background, but I did bust out my old textbooks.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but yeah, it's interesting in the industry. Like one minute you can be doing a show about 1903, and the next minute you're doing a show about a train set in the future. And so you
Yeah.
really have to adapt to that and like lean on your previous experience as well as the wonderful world of the internet.
Yes.
So there was actually a lot of reference material for that specific time period, luckily. And then the main dress that was like the ballroom sequence for that movie was based off of one of the most famous dresses of that time period. And we just, went with a base design of what that historically would look like, and then we expanded it so that it would suit the aesthetic of the film, and
When you
that was amazing.
When you say the most famous dress of that time period, are you talking about was it like a specific dress or just the type and the make of
It
the
was the it
dress?
was the type and the make. I believe that there was this a creator that spearheaded that design. The name escapes me now, but that specific bodice and embellishment was very popular at that
Hmm.
time. So we kind of honed in on that and used some fabrics that were similar to the ones that were used. And the girl who made the dress actually is a historical replica costume maker, like a cutter,
Wow.
and she's incredible. Her name is Jennifer Bond, and she does custom corsetry and historically accurate costuming, like creating it. So she actually sewed that one and cut it, and yeah, so I designed it and she cut it, and it was amazing.
That's incredible. I mean, the amount of work that like I don't know. One time I was in a play in high school and I had someone come and talk to me about how Victorian people only moved in like half circles or something. I was like, how do y'all even know this? I mean, it's
Mm.
the amount of research that y'all do is that's super cool. That's really
Yeah, it
interesting.
was really interesting.
So you've mentioned Snowpiercer a couple of times, and that is, I mean, that's like completely different from Hallmark or period pieces or anything, because like you said, it's dystopian, it's in the future, it's on a train. So what's that? I don't know, what's that been like? That seems really interesting to me.
Yeah, so Carolyn Cranston, she was heading the department, the costume department of that show, and she asked me to come on and do the background costumes. And basically, that was a whole other department. Like in a regular show, you have like one costume designer, and they just do kind of everything for the most part. But that show is so huge and so specific that like the background costumes on that show, because they're on the train
Mm-hmm.
for the whole show, so they're like regular actors, like they're reoccurring. So that was so interesting because um there weren't a lot of limits. Like, you know, she set the like the directive of like what this should look like, but it was crazy. Like we had people in angel wings and booty shorts, and then like trapeze outfits with gold like headpieces and fur coat. It was insane. Yeah. So and it was that was like the probably one of the more fun projects that I've worked on. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I kind of, you would think, I guess, that if you're not like the head, you're not the costume department head, and you're just doing like, I feel like you'd have less creative control, but it sounds like you had, just kind of free reign to go
It
wild
no,
within
it
the
really
limits.
yeah, it really depends who the cost. Like when I
Mhm.
design, I'm pretty specific about what I want and how I want it to look. Carolyn's amazing, and she was basically like, you know, do what you think is best for this. Like
Mhm.
she's amazing. So, yeah, it depends who your teammates are and how they run their department. So
Yeah.
that was great to be part of that. Yeah.
So this is the last question. It's supposed to be a little bit of a fun one. I don't know. It's do you have a favorite costume that you've designed?
Do I have a favorite costume that I've designed? Yes. Yes, I did. Well, two things. When I had my clothing line, we did Fashion Week. So the last piece that I designed for that was a giant corseted jellyfish that lit up while she walked
Wow.
down the runway. So it was
Oh my
incredible.
gosh.
Yeah, so it was like I took photos from the Vancouver Aquarium of the jellyfish, and I had it
Mhm.
made into fabric. And so, but then the bodice that was coming out was shaped like a jellyfish, and it was all underlit, so it glowed. It was pretty incredible. That one was amazing, and yeah, the 1900s recreation dress for Timeless Christmas was pretty great
Mhm.
too. Hmm.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, those are all my questions. So if you want to list, where people can find you on social media, or your website or anything.
Hmm. Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Trish P. I believe I have to check. I haven't checked in so long. Yeah, I think that's it. And trishpetrovich.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
I knew very little about costuming before
I
this, but now I feel so much more enlightened. And
know.
the next time I go into any clothing store, I'm gonna be on the lookout for how it's laid out and
Yeah,
everything.
sounds good.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
thank you so much again. It was
Thank
so
you.
nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you as well.